You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, you know why we're here today. We're here to talk about the best anime villain, in my opinion, obviously. Now, I want to address that really quick at the start of the video, get it out of the way. When talking about the best anything in anime or in any medium, it's obviously very subjective. There are a bunch of different kinds of villains. Different ones resonate more with different people, and each archetype of villain has its ups and its downs. There's no such thing as a perfect villain. Each one has a flaw, so I understand that this video is very subjective. I suppose an alternate title could be my favorite anime villain, but I do honestly think who we're going to talk about today is the best anime villain. And you've already seen the anime that's playing in the background, so at the very least you know what series it's from, so I guess I'll get it out of the way right now and tell you that today we're going to be talking about Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. Now, the first thing I want to do is make sure we're all on the same page about what a villain is. I don't mean to belittle anyone's intelligence, I'm sure you all know, but I'm just going to give you the definition that I'm working with, and that is obviously the one off of Google, and it defines a villain as a character whose evil actions or motives are important to the plot, and I would say that without a doubt Hisoka is quite important to the plot. He's there at the start of the anime and he's there at the end. That is another thing worth mentioning. I am really talking about Hisoka mostly in the context of the Hunter x Hunter anime. I'm not saying he's like different or anything in the manga, but as I'm not completely caught up with the manga, there's quite a bit of it that I haven't read. I just want to make it clear that my expertise, what I know, pertains to the anime, and so in my head, I'm thinking of the Hisoka from the anime. So let's talk a little bit about what you need to be a good villain, which kind of is a little bit funny saying a good villain, because obviously to be a villain you need to be evil. But you need to have, for sure, two things. There's two massively important pillars on which you must build your foundation, and that is your villain needs to be both threatening and unpredictable. If you do not have a villain that people are scared of, it is not going to be impactful for your series. If you have a villain that people think is a bitch, people are just going to be like, oh, that's the bitch, I don't care what he's doing. And unpredictable, I think, is an often underrated trait for a villain to have. If a villain, it's really easy to tell what his motivations are, what he's going to do at all times. He's just not that exciting. There are tons of villains in fiction, usually less important side villains, but ones that are just evil for the sake of being evil. They're just killing people to kill people. They have their place, and I think that there is a certain catharsis in just mindless destruction and violence, but to actually really achieve the pinnacle of what a villain can be, I think that unpredictability is a very, very important part in that. And without these pillars, like I said before, you can't really build a compelling villain. And I would like to add that I think being smart is important. An intelligent villain is always much more engaging and intimidating to me than just like a mindless beast. You know, if you are talking about like a big scary monster, yeah, it's a big scary monster, but if it doesn't have any level of intelligence, if it's just like essentially a large animal, that at the end of the day is sort of the limit of what I'm going to look at it as. It will be as scary to me as encountering a grizzly bear in the wild would be, and not much more. So, next up, I want to talk about looks, because just like in life, looks are very, very important for villains. Your villain needs to look, well, villainous. He needs to look relatively scary. And my God, look at Hisoka. I mean, that is pretty damn scary. That being said, you have to have more than just looking scary. If your villain just looks scary, but you've neglected the other foundations to sort of work on, or I don't know why I worded it like that. If you've neglected to work on the foundation we talked about early, your scary looks are essentially just going to waste. You shouldn't have made them because you didn't do the work beforehand. And I've watched a lot of anime, quite frankly, an embarrassing amount. You know, I'm not really. Anime and I have a rocky relationship right now. I wouldn't say we're exactly on good terms, but I've watched a lot of it. I'm a little bit embarrassed by the amount of anime that I have watched, and I personally, in my adventures watching it, have not found a single villain that embodies these traits that I just spoke of better than Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. I think he is as good as I've seen, and possibly as good as it could get while written by a human. And in fact, if you just Google anime villain, He's very early on in the search results, so I mean, he's clearly a pretty popular choice for favorite villains. So now what I want to do is just sort of rapid fire list off some reasons why I think that Hisoka is the best villain, or why he's my personal favorite anime villain, and then I'll sort of circle back and elaborate on each one more as needed. I think that'll be the best way to do this. So, first of all, he has a look that is both scary and whimsical. You know, he's a clown. On the surface, he may seem aloof, but he is actually very, very calculating and intelligent. He has understandable short term goals, but in the long run, we have literally no idea what this man is building up to. He is an enigma. He regularly demonstrates a ruthless competence, and finally, he does not discriminate. So, let's begin elaborating. So, the first one, a look that is both scary and whimsical. How can this be? Well, because the genius decision was made to model him after a clown. He is supposed to look like a clown. Now, just a clown wouldn't have been very scary. I mean, to some specific people who have the phobia of clowns, a traditional clown, an Auguste clown, would have looked scary. But I think most people don't actually find clowns that scary. Like, maybe if you saw one standing in a dark road off in the distance, you'd be like, oh, what the fuck? But to actually see a clown walking around and talking and interacting with people, you would eventually just be like, what is this? So he has the whimsical side from being inspired by a clown, but he does look pretty frightening. He's got the scary hair, he's got the face tats. You know, he looks like a very capable man. Next up is the whole gap in his personality, seeming sort of aloof, maybe a little detached, but sometimes even just friendly, but in fact being very calculating and murderous. This is sort of the same concept of like gap moe, where something is attractive because its reality is very different from its appearance. I think this is just a trait that people like often in fiction. I'm no exception. Not gap moe. I mean, having a gap in what you appear to be and what you actually are is very nice, because you basically get the best of both worlds. He can have his moments where he's lighthearted and he's having fun, but he's always going to keep you feeling tense because you don't know when he's going to switch to the real him and be cold and calculating and absolutely decimate someone. Now, this next one is definitely, I think, the most subjective on this list in terms of like noteworthy reasons why he's a good villain, and that's the whole his short-term goals are understandable, but his long-term goals are a mystery. I mean, there's not really much more to say about that. In the short term, he'll have goals like, oh, I want to make Gon stronger so that he'll be a more entertaining fight for me one day. But honestly, even as a Hunter x Hunter fan who's watched the series many, many times, I'm not honestly sure I know what he actually aspires to in life. I personally don't think I really believe that he's just going through life trying to fight people. I think he's got something going on. But the great thing is, even if he doesn't have anything greater going on, it made me, and I'm sure many other people, feel like he did. So it did its job, even if that didn't get a payoff or hasn't gotten a payoff yet. Now, the next one, the whole regularly demonstrating the ruthless competence thing. There's nothing scary about a villain that is constantly failing. You know, think of like a good example would be Team Rocket. Not that Team Rocket is supposed to be scary, but you know, they're kind of the villains of the series for a lot of the time, and they're not scary because how could they be? They're just failing over and over and over again. That's why it's funny. But if you're talking about a villain meant to be taken seriously, if their plans are constantly being thwarted and they're failing all the time, you know, there's nothing really entertaining about it. Hisoka, on the other hand, seems to never really fail unless it's intentional, which makes him scary because you know that if he wants to do some fucked up shit, which he often does, he's probably gonna get it done. Now, the last one, and I'm sure when you first heard it, you were like, what? Doesn't discriminate? What does that mean? I don't mean this in like a workplace diversity type of discrimination. I mean it more in like, he does not discriminate when picking his victims. It seems like he will go after just about any type of person at any time. And this ties back into the whole unpredictability thing. That makes him very unpredictable. You don't know how he's going to react to any certain people. You know, there are villains who they insist on having like some level that they won't cross. So maybe it'll be like, I don't go after children, or like, I won't hurt women, or even something as obscure as like, I won't hunt or murder second trimester pregnant women. You know, the fact that they have that line that they won't cross means that they are on some level more predictable, and to me at least, less overall intimidating. Hisoka, on the other hand, if there is something he won't go after, I have legitimately no idea what that would be. So there you have it. There is my favorite anime villain, the person who I think is the best villain in all of anime, who best embodies what I want in a villain. I am actually very curious, who are your guys' favorite anime villains? Keep in mind, there are no wrong answers. This is one time will I admit, like, your opinion is your opinion. It is fully subjective. Whatever villain you like, I won't judge you for it. And quite frankly, if someone does judge you for it, they're a beta cuck. So let me know in the comments, what villain is your guys' favorite? How do you think about, or what do you think about Hisoka? How do you feel about him? That's going to be it for this video. I will see you guys again with another video very soon, I hope.